Yeah, okay. So I guess we could do like the legal stuff, not legal stuff, but like just like I don't think it'll come up, but if before I release it online, if there's anything you want to like me to edit out or whatever, then that's perfectly fine. So I'll just put that out
No,
there. I don't
I'm
think
a.
it'll come up.
One of my ethos is that I try to live up to is a degree of radical transparency. So
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
I've always
we'll
been
try to get into deep stuff then.
yeah. Well, I always in theory loved the idea of the of Seuss valence, right?
Oh, what's that? Seuss Valence. Never heard about.
Well, it's I mean it riff on the idea of surveillance, right? But the idea then
Oh, okay.
is everyone is recording everything at all times, kind of thing. Which I
Right.
feel like in the long term is really the only sustainable thing because at a certain point, where there's so many recording devices and stuff around that if you don't democratize that, then that just gives more power to whatever power structures exist, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if like as it stands, it'll
Yeah.
be like if the NSA wants anything, they got it. If you want anything on the NSA, they're like, too bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's a power dichotomy, the fact that they know about us, but we don't really know about each other. Right? It creates a sense of distrust, maybe, amongst people.
Yeah,
Like you're
well, that
saying,
among other
just
problems.
everybody
Yeah.
knows about everything kind of thing, then it would be better for society, I guess. That's the idea.
Yeah, well, especially, I mean, I can see an argument for for privacy. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
going to be super crazy about that, and say that it's definitely better if there's no privacy. Although, I do sometimes think about like how many problems would be solved if everyone was telepathic. Like, our society would
Mm-hmm.
convulse for a bit and culture would change dramatically. But after a while, I think that would actually be for the better. But
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, I think there's a reason why we evolved to lie, right? There's an evolutionary usefulness to it, and there's a social usefulness to it, right? The fact
oh,
that
sure.
we keep things secret. So I wonder, like, if we were all telepathic, maybe we would just have developed a new way of keeping certain things secret, or a new way of lying, or whatever, right?
Yeah, maybe. I guess though what I'm getting at though within the context of our like foreseeable near future, the problem is that to a degree, there's increasingly not going to be such a thing as privacy from powerful interests, right? Like the government and large megacorporations will have whatever information about you they want if they want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so other than like the only way to like I don't think that can really be walked back. I think it just we have to go forward into it then to have like okay,
Yeah,
full accountability. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll be like develop this sort of offline way of communicating, like carrier pigeons or something as a way of sort of circumventing the NSA's ability to spy on us. There is our mutual friend, he who will not be named, who, who has no online presence, right? He totally sort of attempts to scrub himself of
well, yeah. Well, he tries to, but he's got a cell phone, right? So I mean,
that's
the
right,
government
and a
knows where he
Tinder account
is
as well.
unless he ditches the cell phone, right? Like, and in theory, the government could be listening to him all the time. But wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily know. I mean, I don't think that's actually true yet, but it's going to get increasingly hard to be sure.
Sorry, you chopped out of this. There.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh no, it might have been me walking. Like the downside of my overly like fancy mic here is that it's very directional. So if I go like,
Okay. Oh,
and
yeah,
then now
yeah.
I'm back again.
Yeah. That's good actually, because I rented was it condenser mic? I guess it's called.
hmm
Versus what's the other one? The
Dynamic.
dynamic mic. Yes. So this will pick up everything. If the neighbor's dog farts, you're probably gonna hear it on this microphone. It's
Well,
very
actually,
very sensitive.
that's actually the other side of it. Not whether it's condenser or dynamic so much as like the shape of it. Like they have like kind of pickup shapes.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
it's like mine is like yeah, so mine is like super cardioid, so it's really forward. It doesn't like it's a narrow angle forwards, but the downside of that is that it because of the I forget the way that the physics works on this, or why specifically, but like the it also by narrowing forward, it also picks up a bit backwards as well. So if I was like handling it, like if I touch this mic here, you can probably hear it a fair bit. Maybe not actually. That was kind of my dampening seems to be actually working. But you know, that's the downside of these kind of mics. But then if you're not actually holding it, you know, whatever.
Right, right. Okay. That's actually one thing I wanted to talk about was just your knowledge of technology has always impressed me and amazed me. And it's one of the things that I value in having you as a friend is that whenever I have a question about technology or I'm unsure about what laptop to buy or whatever, I just ask Keith because he'll know everything. But then I'm kind of curious, like, does that annoy you, the fact that I'm just the one asking you questions?
No, it's quite the opposite, really. It's like to a large degree, I sometimes worry that I've accumulated all this knowledge that's mostly useless, right? Like, I mean, I know all this minutia of things, and for the most part, it's like, what fucking use is that? So
Okay.
when people ask me that, it's almost like I'm like amortizing my investment or something, you know? Like,
Okay.
it's like I was
Okay.
like, oh, excellent, yeah,
Okay,
this
that's
is
good.
paying off.
Right, yeah, I'm not gonna die with my obscure knowledge of Linux laptops going into the void or whatever. It will come to use. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I mean that's the thing, right? Like I'll be like bombarding you with questions. I almost feel like it's like, oh my god, probably Keith is sick of being asked this stuff.
No, it's quite the opposite. It's always a relief to actually put some of that,
Mhm.
all these this details and nuances to use.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing, right? Like whenever I'm trying to buy something, there's the advertising side of it, right? The story you're being told from marketers about what this technology is and what it will do for you versus what it actually is and what it will actually do for you. There's that
Yeah.
lying, that deception again, right? Marketing is a kind of deception. It's a camouflage. I think it's like it's like any kind of natural camouflage, obscuring what something actually is. So to be able to get someone, and then we have all these websites and things developing now, which try to get to what something actually is. Like in people's reviews of this technology. And then I guess you have the counter of that, of where now you have like bots coming on. It's like the companies hire bots to go on and put on these marketing websites and put fake reviews of what these things are.
Yeah, or even more insidious. Sometimes it's real reviews, right? It's that the companies are sending out free products to people so that they'll
Okay.
review them, and then they're not even telling them like you have to give us a good review, but the fact that the
Right.
company gave
Right.
people a free product is going to put them in a certain headspace where they're more likely to give a positive review.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, we got that a lot at Planet Organic. When I worked at Planet Organic, they would take us natural lip. So I worked at face creams in the supplements section, right? And Keith, you worked at the grocery, right? Grocery
Yeah.
department, yeah. So I guess for us, I don't know why it was just natural living people, but they were always taking us out for free dinners and giving us free products, and it was ridiculous the amount of free stuff we got. And it definitely does taint your selection. Like, I'm going to recommend this product because they gave it to me free, and they took me out for a nice dinner, kind of thing.
Yeah. Very different experience over in grocery. Although to be fair, I think to some degree the kind of middle managers and the people above them even there is a degree of like friendliness with certain vendors and stuff like that probably did have that kind of effect. But
Okay.
the peons like me, like we're just like, you know what I hate? Voss water. You know why? Because it's these incredibly breakable glass fucking containers.
Right.
Every single box of them, at least one of them is fucking broken.
Yeah. It's interesting that, I mean, the I don't know. I'm thinking about like the inefficiencies within, the owners of Voss Water maybe are like wondering like why is our water not selling well or whatever, because the grocery people are not recommending it because they hate it because it's made of glass bottles.
Oh, I'm going to your kind of tying it into kind of this evolutionary like push and pull there. Like, I feel like there's a degree to which the glass was making it very unfit as a product in some respects, but the consumers never see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just see fancy glass bottles on the shelf and they go, oh, I like this one. It has a fancy glass bottle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's probably why the marketers chose a fancy glass bottle too.
Hmm. Oh yeah, because I mean, like you went over to like Savon or such. I remember that they have Vost as well, but they had it in plastic
Oh,
cans, right?
okay, okay. So you think it's like the clientele that comes to a Planet Organic is going to be people who don't want plastic bottles; they want glass bottles.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly. It's a bit
That's
more
slightly
upscale,
higher
a bit
price.
more
Yeah,
natural or something. Yeah.
yeah. There's all this subtlety. I mean, I guess I don't know. I've heard about like something like phytoestrogen or something in plastic into the water. Into I don't know if that's true or not, but
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's. I mean, part of the problem with trying to unpick that kind of thing is that plastic is like it's that classic no such thing as a fish thing, right? Like plastic is almost meaningless as a term in some respects. I mean, it tells you it's not metal,
oh, okay.
and it's not glass, but I mean, like plastic is a wide variety of substances. Most of them, I think it's pretty much all petrochemical based, but then what the actual chemicals in it are varies super wildly.
Right. And that's what maybe makes it so hard to recycle, right? Because they need
Oh
specific
yeah.
facilities for different types of plastic.
Well, and if it's not well labeled on the plastic, then like what you don't you got to get in the recycling facility and you're just like, okay, what do we do with this? It's just this unlabeled plastic thing. What do we know? Like if we mix it in with some other plastic, our way of processing it might entirely not work or something, right?
Yeah, we're creating these crazy chemicals, I guess, that no one really cares. It's just make more of it. I mean, they have the what is it, hemp plastic now? There's a lot of different ways that they can make biodegradable plastics now, which is pretty cool. I like
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like the all the corn based
yeah,
ones and
corn
stuff.
based.
Although sometimes you wonder if they'd actually be economically viable if the U.S. didn't so heavily subsidize corn farming, for the sake of like the Iowa corn lobby and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I mean, oil and gas is subsidized to a certain extent too.
Oh
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those. I think I'm sure it's a better choice in the long term, anyways.
Mhm.
But it's funny to think that that we might be getting these good things for bad reasons too, right? Like, it's the coincidence of like, but it just so happens that in this case, the lobbying ends up in a good product.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so complicated, right? Like for a while, I had switched over to almond milk because I don't like dairy for a variety of reasons. One of which I don't like the environmental impact it puts. But then I mean, then you hear well, almonds are sucking up water in California because all the almonds are grown in California and it's causing droughts over there. Soy. I like soy because I don't like to eat meat. But then they have Brazilians farmers are burning down the Amazon rainforest to produce soy crops. So it's like
Yeah.
the degree to which you can be ethical in this kind of system. I don't know. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. Well, and it's I mean that the part of the key problem there I think is that these are complex things that are all highly interrelated in sometimes very surprising ways that so I mean you can try and I think it's worth trying, but it's also worth understanding that there's not going to be like, oh well, it solves everything if I just get this product instead. Like it's never going to actually be the solution.
Yeah, it's a perspective. You just do the best you can. Yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation with our mutual Marxist communist friend, who shall not be named again. That about his argument was that well, we just need a revolution. Like that's it. Just focus all your energies on a revolution, and that's the only thing that's important is bringing about a Marxist revolution, and that will solve. I don't know if he's saying that will solve all the problems, but that's. Whereas my argument is like, okay, yeah, you can push towards that, but also like on a day-to-day level, just doing little things to help make the world a better place seems to me not only a better. It's almost like the argument of the ends justify the means thing, right? Whereas I don't view the ends justifying the means because I think that the ends are the means, right? The place we end up is determined by the steps we take to get there. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's always something I struggle with a bit because I mean there is a degree of some the especially when you think about unintended consequences and about and the kind of these complex systems that are larger than us, and then we're going in one direction that's actually feeding in some force that then loops back and goes in an entirely different direction. Like it's tricky, but in some respects that makes it even both a better and worse argument for the against the ends justify the means. Because if we're in such a complex, chaotic system, there is a degree to which that's almost seems like an argument for, well, then we should just be doing the best we can with what's in front of us, because we're not going to be able to ever know the entirety of it anyways. But then maybe we're trapped in a system that's going to be ultimately self-defeating, and unless we aim for on a more macro scale, maybe we can never escape it. I don't know. It's a hard nut to crack.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I would take the Buddhist view, which is that all things end eventually. So if we're part of a system that's eventually going to decay, well, I mean, we are part of a system that's eventually going to decay and die. This will end. Human species will end at some point. So worrying about, basically what I'm trying to say is all systems are eventually self-defeating. So you just got to kind of do the best you can, moment to moment. I don't know. Maybe I'm sounding very sure, but it's not a philosophy that I'm definitely sure about. So.
Well, and I think some of it comes down to is that we if we're ever too sure about one side of this or the other, we're probably off balance on it, right? Mm-hmm. Like we have to be considering both of these sides of the argument. Otherwise, we might be neglecting things that would be very obvious if our minds were a bit more open to
it. Yeah. But then on the other side of that, you end up in this perpetual state of uncertainty and never knowing what is the right thing to do.
Well, as they say, everything in moderation, including moderation.
Right? Yeah. But there's a middle way. I just realized we hadn't even done introductions here. We just jumped right into it. So who are you? Who are you, person on the other side?
I am Keith Zubat Gephardt.
Oh, okay. Yes, full.
I was born in here in Edmonton.
Okay, yeah. So we both live in Edmonton, and we've been friends for a long time. I was thinking that you're probably my oldest friend that I'm still in contact with, which is pretty cool. Because we went to junior high together. That was it, right? Junior high?
Yeah, I think you might. Yeah, I think it's the same for me. I think there's a couple people from junior high that I'm still in contact with, and I don't think I'm not really in contact with anyone else from elementary or such. Which is interesting too, because everyone in my elementary pretty much went to McKernan, but that wasn't the people that kind of stuck.
I mean, I still have a friend on Facebook from elementary school who also went to McKernan as well, but we don't talk that much. But that's one of the other reasons I wanted to do this sort of podcast idea, was that I found I have a lot of friends on Facebook who I don't contact with that often. Maybe we like each other's posts once in a while, or we make some comments, but I don't know a lot about these people, and it's fun to just kind of talk to someone and find out more about them, right?
Yeah. Facebook is good for kind of this passive sense of keeping in touch, but that's a very different thing than an active engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's an interesting social dynamic that's being set up now, I guess. Because it's pretty cool that I can make a post on Facebook that I want to start this idea of a podcast, and I have all these people replying, and hopefully at some point I might be able to sit down and have an hour-long conversation with them. That's something that we couldn't do before Facebook, for sure.
Yeah, although then there's it's keeping in the flip-flopping motif here. Like there's always the downside of like all our social interactions being centralized through a couple avenues, and even if Facebook entirely means well, there's degrees to which that kind of shapes and warps the way we actually interact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like I've been lately interacting a lot with people on my Facebook feed who are very conspiratorial, I guess is the word. Very anti-mask, flat Earth, QAnon, anti-government,
Yeah.
because I'm curious about, I'm not trying to put them down, but I'm genuinely curious about what their views are, because they're quite different than mine. As a result of that, though, is that my Facebook feed has just been constant QAnon conspiratorial stuff
Yeah.
popping up.
Yeah.
And then I might get into the wrong headspace that the whole world is believing in that sort of thing. Whereas it's very big, right? There's a lot of different views.
Yeah. We're there's these feedback loops that our social media feeds get into that give a very very skewed sample population of the world. Then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like it's only going to get more and more the case. Like there's even a new social media that's come up with now, that was come up with by this libertarian guy. I can't remember the name of it.
Parlor is the one maybe.
I don't
Parlor is
think
the one
it
that
starts with a W, I think.
Oh, W, huh?
But a lot of my friends who are finding Facebook is because I think Facebook started like putting filters if something was deemed as fake news, or if something was doing like fact checks on posts now. And a lot of my friends were getting upset about that because they felt that their voices were being unfairly silenced, and so they're drifting over to this other social media group, other social media company. And yeah, so I feel like that's only going to kind of get that sort of echo chamber effect of where we just have people isolated in these different communities, not interacting with each other very much. It makes sense from a social standpoint too, because it's irritating to hear an alternative point of view. It's very comforting to hear the same view echoed back to you all the time, I think.
Yeah. Certainly, most people do tend to feel that way. I feel like there's also an impulse sometimes to seek out other points of view, but sometimes that's not even one that then changes one's own view. That itself can sometimes be reinforcement, where you just you're trying to find your 15 minutes of hate.
Yeah. That was another thing. I went on a binge of watching like these YouTube debate channels, these very like powerful personalities debating, a neo-Nazi or something. And yeah, it's very satisfying to hear someone like, just going off on someone, and you get caught up in the views, and you're like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they got him. Yeah.
Yeah, they got him. Exactly. Yeah. I like this one guy, Vosh. He's kind of a market socialist, I guess, and his views. He tends to be pretty logical and tries to hear the other side out, I guess. But there is still an element of gotcha kind of to it. Well, no, I mean, one of the points I had on here was that it's nice too about having conversations with other people that, like we're seeing this already. Like I had a list of things that maybe we were going to talk about, but we haven't hit hardly any of it, which is great, because a lot of the time I do find I'll have a conversation with other people in my head. I don't know if this is weird, but I will often have conversations with people in my head to kind of think about what they would say back, and then I would say this, and then I can have a kind of dialogue, and it's good, but it also it misses what the other person is actually going to say, right? Like it's really just me. It's just really just my projection of what I think this person is going to be wanting to talk about.
Yeah. You're rearranging and kind of playing around with the bits of information you already have, and that can be very very meaningful and useful. But you're fundamentally not getting anything new then. Other than the stuff that can be kind of arrived at by combining the ideas that are already there, but having new raw materials to work with is always going to have a much higher chance for edification.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the power of community. That's the power of relationships, right? And Yeah, and I guess that like that's the fear that I would have with these sort of echo chamber systems, is that you're going to have people who aren't hearing a lot of alternative views, or maybe I'm not gonna. It's going to be hard for me to reach out to someone with different views and try to engage with them. I don't know if that's a new thing. I mean, this is the environment that I have grown up in and live in, so maybe it's always kind of been like this. Maybe it's always been hard for, you know, a pro-Biden person from 50 years ago to talk to a pro-Trumper or whatever.
Yeah, I think to the degree that it's new is just that I think because there's so much more media out there, some of these things become more of people's lives. Like the presidential election didn't used to take like multiple years to play out, you know. Like it used to be a bit more along the lines of something like here in Canada, we, you know, our election cycles don't last nearly that long, right?
Yeah. So what do you think why do you think that happened? Why did it stretch out that much?
Some of that I think is just kind of inevitable, especially when you increasingly centralize power in like one office, then it becomes so much of a bigger deal. But it's also just because it's sort of the gravitational pull of spectacle, right? Like when everyone as the more people that are running for office and the more people are talking about the people running for office, the more meaningful and useful it is to do so, right? Like, I mean, well, our current vice president elect, right? Like Kamala Harris, she got all of no votes in the primary. Like she dropped out before she scored any elections. But by being there in the spotlight, by being on debate stages and stuff like that, she was prominent enough that she ended up being chosen to be the vice president, right? The candidate, and now, assuming nothing screwy happens in Michigan or something, going to be the vice president. And then you have all these other people that seem to, like, all these fairly unremarkable politicians like Pete Buttigieg and such, that it seems to be like, what were they there for? Probably hoping for some book deals and maybe a cabinet position.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there was no chance they were going to win.
And I think that's what Trump was kind of hoping for too when he first ran for president. I believe his idea was that he was going to start a media company or something out of this. You know, he was going to get some more publicity, and then oh shit, I won. I'm the president of the United States now.
Yeah, and then you have years and years of all his business associates getting into legal trouble, and they're like, "This is so unfair. We never should have gotten in trouble." And it's like, well, actually, it's true. If he hadn't won, there wouldn't have been this kind of scrutiny, and they would have noticed. But they were always doing things that were illegal, but we just never go after them. And it was just inescapable, and everyone's like, "Okay, I guess that does look pretty illegal. I guess we got to investigate them." But yeah, I think in general, I think that it's always been. I mean, it's been more polarized at times in the past, right? I mean, like,
okay, yeah.
We look at some of the, like, kind of demonstrations and stuff, and we look at horrific things like that one guy that actually shot a couple of people, right? You know, that's terrible. But
what's that? What are you talking about?
Well, like the Kyle Rittenhouse or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And we look at stuff like that, and that's all really terrible. But then you consider that to, like, the kind of violence that happened in elections after the Civil War, for instance. We're quite sedate, right? Like the level of polarization and what that means, like the level of actual death and destruction and stuff that is surrounding these things is actually a lot less than
it's true. Yeah. It's good to remind ourselves. Be reminded of that. That I think the statistics have shown that the violence in our society has been going down steadily for the past hundreds of years or so. So
yeah, you never notice that. You never know that from the police budgets, but it's very true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't notice it from the news either. You know. Yeah, I guess.
Or the next, or speaking of social networks, or the next door social network where it's just constantly people being like, "I saw a suspicious person in the alley. I bet they're stealing things."
Yeah, and that's, you know, like that was the thing I got out of the Vosh debates that I was listening to. You know, where he's talking with people on the far right a lot of the time, and their primary news source, as far as I'm aware, for say 80 million Americans is listening to talk radio, where it basically is that it's a lot of that, right? It's like someone calling up and
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, I saw blah blah blah. I had this anecdotal relationship with a minority, and therefore blah 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 blah." And when you're bombarded with that, yeah, it's easy to believe that we're in a very violent and scary society. That, although on the other hand, I mean, like you said, the police budgets have been going up, and there's a reason for that. Um, is because I think the people in power recognize that we are in a kind of unstable time, politically, economically, and I think that's my theory as to why they're putting so much money into police budgets now.
Yeah, I can buy that. I think that's only part. I think that's only starting to be the case though in some respects. Like I to some degree, I think it's just one of the classic things where just power tends to accrete, right? Like police were always one of the. I mean, inherently are always going to be one of the more powerful like blocks in a governmental structure because they're the part that's actually enforced with upholding the law and stuff, right? Like and enforcement and stuff.
Okay.
So they're always going to be like have a certain amount of power that is unique to them, and that I think that kind of power then slowly accumulates more and more power over time.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that's
point.
yeah.
Sorry,
But you're right. Like yeah, I think especially as I think that's where a lot of it came from. Although again like. Some of it's traditionally been we use the police to oppress certain minorities and stuff, right? But but yeah, that is the fear is that, and the kind of the really chilling thought is the idea that the police are going to be increasingly useful for those in power, as as we have stuff like the current pandemic is actually an example of some of the dramatic consequences of maybe even climate change, right? Like I mean, as more and more people are as environments are being disrupted and more of the world is interconnected and destabilized.
Yeah. Okay. Because I do think that yeah, like you said, like as these things, the police are to a certain extent a tool used by people with a lot of money, right? Because how does that actually mechanically take place? People with a lot of money are able to influence politics, and they are able to influence budgets for police, and therefore if they see a usefulness behind having a very armed militant police force, then they will push society in that direction. They'll push politics in that direction. So I think that there is a usefulness of police as a tool in suppressing alternative views.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, yeah, once you give power to a thing, it starts to gain its own independence, because you're giving it that power. At some point, it starts to develop its own sentience and becomes its own, feeding itself that power.
Yeah, I mean, police unions are some of the only unions that haven't been broken at this point in North America, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, I was thinking about when you were talking. I was thinking about the Marxist view. I guess keep coming back to that because I've been getting into a lot of Marxist discussions lately. I don't know. Like, I feel like that's an important point that. Marxists often like to reduce everything to the labor production, right? That things are produced, that our productive capacity to produce things is sort of the determining force in the world, and because we have this class distinction between the people who own things and the people who work, who sell their labor in order to survive, that is kind of the determining factor for all of society. But then we have these feedback mechanisms where once where society, because human society is so complicated, we get more complicated systems emerging. But I almost feel like human beings are at this state where, we're not struggling to survive. Like here in the West, at least, we're not in a daily struggle to survive. So almost those labor forces often take a back seat to these feedback mechanisms, which actually become more prominent and actually become the driving force in our societies, where I don't care about like food because I just go to the grocery store and I get food. That's not a big determining factor for me. But these other things, these more complicated, I care about the color of my shirt more than that, because I have all these other things that I can worry about, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly, like the relative comfort we have creates, yeah, like all the stuff that we see on a day to day basis. The systems we interact with are a fair bit removed from the raw struggle for survival,
Right.
and yeah, like that. I mean, and sometimes that is used very cynically against us, right? Like, I mean, we have the current leader of the Conservative Party of Canada talking about reaching out to unions and such, right? And it seems to be largely, a bit somewhat code for both protectionism and also a little bit of racism.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, because I mean, a lot of what they're trying to do is appeal to people who feel like they should have cushy gigs in the trades and such,
Oh, okay.
and they feel that being eroded.
Right.
And then you redirect some of that instead of them thinking about and talking about the kind of the raw social forces underneath that or something like that. You impose this layer over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Of the classic, like, South Park, they're coming to take our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I feel like this idea of like a perfect utopian society doesn't even make sense, because there's always going to be these layers. Like I take the kind of the Buddhist view that our actions are determined by our desires, which are determined by our past experiences. We want things, and then we're trying to navigate through this world to get what we want. And what determines our desires is quite complicated, but it's largely just what has made us feel good in the past. We want to recreate nice feelings, and we want to avoid bad feelings. So if I've lived in a society where I'm, lived like a prince my whole life, my actions are going to be determined by that, right? I'm going to be wanting nice clothes or lots of beautiful women or whatever. I'm not going to care about things that someone else who has been struggling to survive every day cares about, and what their actions are determined by. So, and because we live, like we were talking about before, we live in this complicated world with so many interacting, complicated dynamics. There's always, no matter what utopian society I create, there's always going to be feedback mechanisms that are beyond my control. There's always going to be suffering. There's always going to be aging and death. Yeah. So I don't know, like, I don't even know. Yeah, this all this talk about creating a utopian society to me seems ultimately futile. If that's
that's a cheery thought, but
yeah, I don't.
No, I get you. I get you.
It sounds depressing, but I don't think it's depressing. I think it's. Yeah. Why do I not think it's depressing? I mean, I've been wrestling with these things for a long time, but for me, it's not a depressing thought, because it's the way things are. Like death is inevitable, and you just have to learn to accept that. And the way to learn to accept that is through realizing what is it that you actually want, right? Why is it depressing? It's depressing because we don't want to die, or we don't want our society to die, or we don't want our loved ones to die. and that's an evolutionary thing too, right? Like if an organism evolved to want to die, well, it wouldn't live very long and it wouldn't procreate. So it makes sense that we would evolve not to try to fear death, right? But actually, death it's inevitable. It's not something to be afraid of. And if you accept that, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I feel that. I do struggle with that sometimes, though. Sometimes I end up thinking about it too much, and then the fear of death kind of just grips me very tightly. But I know it's weird too. Like the times that I've come closest to, like the times that I really did believe, oh, I might die now. Like I tended to be quite calm about it, or I'm frankly glib.
Yeah.
more than calm.
Glib. What's the definition of that? What does that mean?
I'm always so bad at defining words, but in this case, I kind of mean like a bit sardonic and sarcastic, a bit jokey about it, and in a sort of knowingly facile way, right? Like when I first moved into the place I still live in after all these years, I've really settled into this dwelling. But when I first moved in, was having a bit of a party, and I went outside for a bit of fresh air because it was kind of warm inside, and I just kind of was just sit outside for a moment. I was just kind of enjoying like the feeling of oh yeah, I'm settling down in this place. I'm sitting on my front steps. This is where I live now. And like two doors down, there was someone outside smoking a cigarette, and I walked over to her and I was like, "Hi, I just moved in. My name's Keith." And she's like, "Hi, oh shit, there's my boyfriend." And this giant guy stormed out of the the duplex there, and like picked me up by my throat.
Oh, what?
Yeah, and then I like dangled there for a moment. I don't know how long it was because it felt like a long time.
Yeah.
Then he dropped me, and I fell on the concrete, smashed my face there. And my reaction to that was to stand up and say, "Well, that was uncalled for," and walk away.
Yeah. What do you do in that situation? Holy crap. Yeah, I mean that's the worst toxic masculinity that we're. Oh, well, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's so stupid. Oh my god.
I know. Well, and they just immediately were like yelling at each other and weren't even paying me any attention or whatever. But like but the fact that I said that, and like I was like had adrenaline coursing through me, but in a way I wasn't feeling that anxious or anything. Mm-hmm. I was just feeling like, ugh. Like for that moment of being like dangling by my neck and be like, what the fuck? And then there's that euphoric sense of relief then afterwards of like, oh, I guess I'm not dead now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean it's the idea of death more than the actual death itself. I think it's the fear. Yeah, because I mean my experiences with anything, not even death, but anything that I'm really afraid of. Is that when I actually experience it, it's like, oh, it's not so bad, and I came out of it, and it's not the end of the world. I mean, look at even like the way we viewed Donald Trump. If Donald Trump had got elected, it's being portrayed as like the end of the world if he got elected. But actually, the world would keep going, and it would be fairly normal, right? That's
he invaded. In the end, he invaded fewer countries than George W. Bush did, right? So it's
exactly fewer than Obama did too, I think.
Yeah. It's like a lot of ways it was just a continuation of the existing trends, like kind of almost plateaued for a bit,
Yeah. So just to get back to what we were saying, I think that it's the fear of the thing, and then once you experience it, it's not that bad. I guess with death, like unless you believe in reincarnation, we're only going to get to experience it once. I like what Ram Dass said about death. I think he said that. Death is one of the only things you can't fail at. You're going to succeed. Don't worry about it. It's not something that you have to struggle with. So that's kind of a comforting thought, I think.
Yeah, everyone will get around to it eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. I can't remember exactly what the original point of that talk was, but that's interesting. Let me look at my notes here. Well, actually, I think one of my questions here was do you believe in God, Keith? And that kind of
Oh.
cycles into the same conversation because my view of I'll let you answer first on that.
Okay. I believe I took a shot at believing in God for like the back half of 1993, but other than that, I don't believe in God. No.
For 2 months in 1993. Is that- Okay. Yeah. So you're like a strict atheist, then you don't think it's.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that I think that there's degrees of which a lot of religious ideas that sometimes come from a place of an understanding that's worth thinking about, like the thinking about the world is more interconnected than we sometimes imagine it to be, or there being larger things that are forces that are fundamentally larger than us that are at work. I think that can be very useful, but I often think that, like, the idea, especially the way we conceptualize in most of our popular religions, that we conceptualize God, seems like it just reduces the wonder and beauty of the world to something that's very human scale.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess the reason I was using this as a segue is because my view of at least a certain perception of God, of maybe I call it the Christian God, but Judeo-Christian God, but it's coming out of a desire for permanence in an infinite world and control in a world that we've had a hard time controlling. Is my personal thoughts on the matter. That it's a kind of we want there to be something that is ultimately in control and ultimately lasts forever, never changes. And that's kind of the perception that a lot of people, the comfort, I guess, a lot of people, I think, get out of that perception of God. I was talking with
both broadly and personally, right? The idea that you'll live forever in heaven is a profoundly comforting thought.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's a comforting thought. But yeah, I was talking with a friend of mine who, she was talking about God, and her perception of God was, what was she? How did she phrase it? I think she said God is the container in which I am able to experience love or something. God is the container in which I am able to experience the profound or something along those lines. And I thought I liked that idea of God as a container, rather than as as some external thing. It's like this. It's something that you're able to experience profoundness through, or mystery through.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't buy it.
But do you feel like my perceptions of gods is that in a way, like, there must be more profound intelligences, entities out there, just imagine where the human species would be if we don't go extinct in, say, 1,000,000 years. If our technology keeps advancing and our understanding of the universe keeps advancing 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, where would we be? I mean, essentially, we would be gods. If we could go back in time to 2,000 years ago with our technology, they would think we were gods, probably. Right? Like, our ability to summon light, out of nothing, and fire projectiles long distances with guns, and do all these, have these little devices where we can have people that we're talking to, faces appearing and talking to them over long distances. That's like,
well, gods, or I mean, the alternate explanation they would come up with would be witches, right? Okay. Like this, right. There's a sense in which this can be perceived as against the natural order of things, right?
Yeah,
it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that sort of thing only comes about because they're able to oppress and kill someone, right? Like the my view of a witch is a person, usually a woman, who had some other medical abilities, some other abilities that were like we're talking about a different kind of technology, but at the same time they were kind of weak relative to the mainstream society at the time, and therefore that fear could translate into aggression, could translate into squashing those people. Whereas if we were, let's say, this imaginary hypothetical situation where we could go back in time with all our technology, they wouldn't be able to burn us at the stake because we just shoot them, or we just, we're way more powerful than they are. So then, in which case, that would probably create a religion. It would be like they would start to worship us because.
Yeah. Well, I mean that does come into a lot. I mean, a lot of religions are based on fear to some degree or another, or like expressly even will say the fear of the gods or God.
Right. Yeah. So,
I guess to go back to the, I'm actually not convinced. Although I hope to be proven wrong, or that I am wrong. But I'm not so convinced that actually it is possible for us to get to some incredibly advanced level where we become like gods in that way, because. That just gets into the Fermi paradox, right? Like I feel like if that was, it's hard to really game that out and then look at the world, the universe around us, and see no sign of that, and then actually reconcile those two things.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so, for those who are listening, or who might hypothetically be listening at some point, who knows? Maybe no one's ever going to listen to this. The Fermi paradox is the paradox that we look out into space and we don't see any other life forms, right? Whereas statistically speaking, there should be very advanced species out there, because if you look at the amount of time it took for humans to get to the point where we're broadcasting radio waves into space and doing all this sort of stuff, and then you look at the number of planets and stars out there in the void, there should be a lot of alien species broadcasting stuff, and they should be coming here with their spaceships, and the whole galaxy should be colonized by some advanced alien species, right? That's am I summarizing? Yeah, and we don't see that, and therefore that the Fermi paradox is why do we not? Yeah, okay. That's so your thinking is that there's something that kind of stops us from advancing to that level?
Yeah, maybe we're just too optimistic about like what is even possible with technology after a certain point. Maybe just the fundamental entropy of the universe is kind of working against us a bit too diligently. Not to put too much intent on it, because I don't actually ascribe an intent to these kind of things. But,
right.
Just the makeup of these things is such that maybe it's just not possible. I don't know. It's really weird to think about. Like, I actually can't quite reconcile it myself. Like I just think about like a von Neumann probe, kind of thing, where the idea of creating a machine that self-replicates, right? And you send it out into the universe, and it goes out and it finds like asteroids and builds more of itself, and it just keeps expanding ever in a cloud, right?
Yeah.
Like you imagine that.
It's very simple to make, something like that.
Yeah. Like all it takes is enough a level of technology to be able to do that, and just like even in if you had some sort of society that was like, imagine an alien society that's super paranoid and just doesn't want to be found by anyone. All it takes is one asshole to be like, nope, making a probe.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want their
like I made a 3D printer that's also
to die, and therefore
yeah. So someone puts out like the equivalent of a NASA, like they crossbreed like NASA's Voyager probe with like a 3D printer and send it out into the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Just you could do it by mistake, even. Not even some asshole is just, oops, we created a self-replicating probe that's now devoured our entire planet, is going out into the galaxy. Yeah.
Well, and that's then the other. That's one of the more depressing kind of possibilities for like solutions to the Fermi paradox, is that maybe it's just at a certain level of technology, it just gets so easy to wreck everything that it's just so much easier to destroy than to create. That just there maybe many civilizations have risen and fallen within what would have been reach of us, but they always managed to kill themselves long before.
Yeah. It's true. I've wrestled with this too. Like I don't. It doesn't make a lot of sense, the fact that we haven't seen that. The universe has been around for 14 billion years now. And you would think that some sort of advanced technology would have conquered something would have conquered the galaxy, and we would see it right now. We don't see it.
Someone out there would be shining a big beacon saying, "Hey, anyone else out there?"
Yeah, and I mean, there's all sorts of sci-fi stories as to why trying to resolve the Fermi paradox. One thing I haven't seen a lot of, though, and this is my suspicion, I guess, is that and this is kind of where I was going before, was that I think maybe once you reach some level, you become to that state where you're almost like a god. The ability to for us here to detect it fades away because you can't even see it. Like an ant looking at a human technology, they wouldn't even be able to see it or understand it, right? Because it's so beyond their comprehension. But you can kind of get a taste of it. For example, you do some psychedelics like LSD or something, and people talk about when they take DMT. I've never taken DMT, but people talk about when they take DMT, they talk to these machine elves. I think it was Timothy Leary or someone was talking about that. The machine elves are these creatures that you encounter when you go into a deep DMT experience, and they come and they download technology into your brain, and they're really like they have this personality to them. So, like maybe that's aliens. How do we know that that's not some super advanced alien species that is interacting with us through psychedelics?
I mean, if so, and I don't believe that really. Like that gets really close to the Matrix hypothesis kind of stuff to me. But if that's true, they're kind of assholes, right? Like that's the at best they're some kid watching an ant farm and watching the ants go to war with each other and just like looking with glee.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, exactly. That's my view too. Like probably there's no reason to believe that these gods are somehow better than us. They're just more powerful than us. So yeah, and there's nothing to worship about these gods. But my perception is that I see no reason. I think it's a possibility in which case, and that's kind of how I would view a god, as being something like that. And yeah, it's no better than like a kid playing with an ant farm. It's just way more powerful and technologically advanced.
Yeah, I guess I figure though, like if that is true, then that's such a long way away from us that you would think that there would be gradations in between, right? Like unless there's one of these godlike intelligences out there and it's like mopping things up, and they just haven't gone around to us yet,
Right.
If they're out there tidying up the insect infestation that is any other sentient life,
Right. It's possible. I mean, in a way, that's what we do, right? Like if you think about our us as a human species, we don't mind the ants as long as they don't come into our house, and then we'll exterminate them completely.
Mm-hmm.
We don't mind bears as long as they stay in the woods over there. But if they come into our streets, then yeah, we're gonna shoot that bear, right? So in a way, yeah, maybe that's kind of what the universe is like. Is that it's like all this sort of buzzing lower level intelligence is out there. But if it reaches to a certain point, it kind of infringes on these god species, and then they're like, "Oh, that's no, get out of here. That's too much."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, this analogy, like maybe it's probably foolish to try to map this too closely to our observable reality, but like with the metaphor that we're using, but I mean, like it's not like ants are alone on a barren planet, right? Like the ants are aware that there are other things around them that are not part of their ant colony, right? And we, as far as we can tell, life on Earth is entirely alone. So that puts us in a very different category, I think.
Life on Earth is alone within the universe, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we still have no evidence yet that there's anything else. So.
Right. Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that, like, they're kept to a level where we're able to interact. Where, how would we know that there's another species out there? At our current level of technology, we would need to hear like radio waves or something, but the universe is so vast that maybe we're... Mm-hmm. I mean, my perception of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is that it's only mapped a very small amount of the actual sky. It hasn't really looked at that much, really. So the fact that we haven't found radio intelligent species out there is really just because we haven't really looked that much. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah. My view on all this is I still can't see it add up. I'm still firmly in that in the valley of the Fermi paradox. But to think about that a bit further though, there is an argument too that I've heard that we're gonna soon, if we soon get like, say, we start doing communication via quantum entanglement, right? Like, so we don't have to worry about that pesky speed of light anymore. We're not using electromagnetic waves, we've got paired particles that we jiggle one in one place and it instantly jiggles in another place. If once you get that, then how would we observe it, right? Like, so you could imagine then that maybe there's technologies out there that once you get that, like, there's just this brief window of a young civilization where they're spewing all this electromagnetic radiation out into the void, and then after that, or maybe even just because we start to get worried about entropy and we're trying to conserve power.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And we just, we stop using all this Wi-Fi,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We go into this kind of slow turtle kind of state, Yeah.
Yeah, or even not even necessarily slow, just like closed loops, right? Like just very efficient in the sense that we're not putting everything we have is directional and contained.
Right, yeah. We're a very inefficient species right now, for sure, yeah. And yes, spewing all this radio waves out into space is an inefficient use of energy. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. We're gonna run out of all that coal and such, and we'll be like, oh, geez, man. That was really wasteful. Come to think of it.
No, exactly, and I mean that's the thing. I've read somewhere that our species, like our level of technology and everything that we rely on in our world, that seems because humanity is so smart and we've created all of this wonderful luxury for ourselves. That really, at the base, it kind of relies on the fact that we've had so much cheap oil that we could burn for energy, and once we run out of that, I mean, the lights are going to go out. We don't really have an alternative energy source as readily available.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you cut off there for a second. I thought you weren't talking. Then I started talking, and then I saw your lips were still moving.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm like, wait, what's going on?
It wasn't important.
Speaking of inefficient technology, but
Shit, the oil ran out.
Oh my God! It happened right now. Didn't think we'd hit peak oil now, but I guess it figures in 2020. Am I right? But I was gonna say, like, the one of the thoughts I often have is like, one of the big problems I have with us burning through all the oil and all the coal and stuff is not even people will say, oh, but we got other alternate energy sources and we can get those up by the time we run out of them. I'm like, true, sure. Maybe that's true. Maybe we'll figure it all out, even at the very leisurely pace we're approaching it. But that does mean if say civilization totally collapses, some big cataclysm, like we have one of those sci-fi scenarios where a really terrible plague actually sweeps through and just wipes out most of humanity or something. We just don't have the people to keep the infrastructure up, and then hundreds of years later, civilization is trying to reform. If we've taken away all the cheap fuel, making solar panels is not a thing you can just do by like mining some rocks.
Yeah, exactly. It's putting back that jumping point that we had to go into the Industrial Revolution and into the whole. It's kind of putting that future building civilization at a disadvantage. If we don't get to that point where we have, say, fusion power before that kind of a drop-off collapse of society.
And even if we do we get there, it's all fine, and it's great, and we have hundreds of years, maybe we have millennia, maybe we have 100,000 years of just this beautiful civilization. And then I don't know, it turns out there's some pulsar that we didn't notice goes off, and the wave sleeps through and just wipes out most of human civilization or something. You know, we have to start again from scratch. We're just like, fuck. We got some books around how to do this, but we don't have the fucking raw materials anymore.
They're all in computer chips, we can't read. No, it's like we have these weird artifacts with scribbles scrawled on them that we can't understand.
Yeah, we're like Siri, read me this book. Siri, where are you, Siri?
Oh, holy Siri, God of. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, and yeah, that's true. That's a possible resolution of the Fermi paradox. I mean, that's the thing. I was reading somewhere else too that like human species, we evolved during a period of insane stability on planet Earth, and in terms of the the sun, the amount of solar activity that's going on. Um, this is a period of relative extra stability. Perfect for for an intelligent species to evolve, and we evolved. But that period is going to end at some point, right? The sun is going to start kicking off solar flares like crazy because it's been doing that in the past, and the environment is going to go more into more chaotic. Just separate from the fact that we're changing the environment as a human species.
Yeah. Well, we're like in a race. Like the universe is like, eventually I might get around to killing you, and we're like, not if we do it first.
Yeah.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Maybe, yeah, maybe maybe there's some like secret death wish. We're so afraid of death that we're like, oh, we're just gonna commit suicide as a species before. Yeah, just segueing into climate change. I mean, that's one thing that I'm interested in with the fact that people don't take climate change. Well, some people take it very seriously, but a lot of people don't seem to change their behavior. Even I booked a flight to Taiwan with my wife in February, and the amount of carbon that's produced by flying a jet. It's hard to take climate change seriously. Whereas you compare that to something like COVID, which has a lot of the similarities to climate change. The fact that I don't personally know anyone who has died of COVID. I don't know anyone who has even caught COVID. But I'm still out there wearing masks, and many people are out there wearing masks and taking steps to try to prevent the spread of COVID. Compare that to global warming. They're very similar, but people don't seem to care about global warming that much.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a degree to which you can argue that we are not sufficiently caring about COVID, right? Like, I mean, I was noticing the other day, I can't say I'm at all an expert on these statistics or anything like that. It's just one statistic I happened to run into was like the breakdown of where outbreaks have happened in Quebec, and it's like over 50% are workplaces.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But but nonetheless, like, and I think that's true generally, like throughout North America, throughout Canada and the US at least, that the workplaces are really the place that is being transmitted. But then all our talk is stuff like don't have Thanksgiving, stay at home, don't meet up with friends. Like, it's all about individual responsibility instead of like looking at the systemic and collective solutions like that, you know. And I think so. I think the same problems of entrenched interests that then are only looking out for themselves, maybe even reflexively, just resisting actually addressing these problems. It's the same as with climate change. It is with Corona.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It's just this one is so much more immediate, so there's more push for them to do something, so more is being done, but it's still...
the countries that have done well with dealing with COVID, like Taiwan has done very good at keeping it under control. They have almost no cases. Has been because the society has gotten on board with we have to deal with this thing, and the power structures have gotten on board with the idea that we have to deal with this thing. Like they had a plan that they had developed after SARS, and they implemented that plan immediately. And it was a fully systemic plan. Like, we're just going to do all these steps and just clamp this thing down before it gets out of control. And certain restrictions that I think would be hard to implement here, like I think if you've been tested positive, you have to put an app on your phone which keeps track of your position at all times. And if you leave, you're under house arrest essentially. And if you leave that place, then the police will come and get you, kind of thing. That would be hard to maybe implement in a Western society.
Yeah, we haven't even implemented a provincial mask mandate, right?
Exactly.
But I feel like it's not. It'd be hard to implement, but I think it's Yeah, but the reasons why it's hard to implement, I think, are not even so much cultural, but they're just where power happens to reside within our
Okay.
culture, right?
Right.
Um, like I don't think I think that people like I mean we've had experience like where we go back to like World War II or something like that. I mean there was
Hmm.
war production
Hmm.
efforts like when we there's been times that are in within our the culture that we're speaking from that we've come together as a dramatic collective action that everyone's lives had to be different for a while to
Right.
do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for whatever like the problem is that this is so directly like some of it's like for World War II or something. I mean the big collective action that had to happen was in part like factories had to be retooled to put out different things and a lot more of them than they were used to. Well, that's actually more production and that's maybe more money than so then the kind of the entities that the repositories of capital and such that would have objected to that would not be
Yeah.
objecting to it is actually
Exactly. Yeah.
beneficial to them. Whereas in this case it's just like the economy is going to have to slow down for a while, and they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm on
Yeah,
board with that.
exactly. Yeah, and that's like the absolute inefficiencies within the system that we have right now. Where it would be better it would be better for the economy in general if we just shut down for a while, put all these restrictions for a little while, and then we could kind of go back to normal,
Hmm.
get it under control, and then go back to normal. Versus this weird like semi lockdown, unlockdown, go back to normal. Okay, now we're kind of state that we're in right now, where it's
Yeah,
really just self-defeating, um, because there's no one in charge,
yeah,
and the economy is run by people that I think are I don't know, I don't think they have a plan at all.
no. Well, and it's all very, very patently self-serving. I mean, I mean, you mentioned the like app on people's phones earlier. Like the like months and months ago now, Apple and Google, companies that traditionally have had a hard time agreeing on standards, got together and they were like, "Here is the standard for an API for writing for a contact tracing app. On our operating systems, we'll implement it, and then apps can just hook into that, and that'll work, right?" So that was the only way to really do something where it can be constantly in the background checking for Bluetooth identification, like the MAC addresses is what they're called, right? Of any Bluetooth device, and then everyone who's using that app, then that's all hashed into the central thing that then but it's anonymized, but can then actually correlate. Oh, this
Right,
device
right,
saw
right.
that device. That might mean these people were close together, right? And the crazy thing is I think it was even just some random people originally wrote an open source implementation of that for Android, and maybe Android and iOS actually, because I think they wrote it in like JavaScript, one of those JavaScript frameworks that's very popular these days. That's very
Okay.
inefficient, but if you're a web designer, you know how to use it, so you make it, and no one notices that their phone is like using slightly more battery, whatever. But anyways, they wrote it in that one of those frameworks, and like it was all open source, and the Canadian government adopted it. Like as far as I can tell, the main difference was the Canadian government like added some splash screens and translated it all into also
Okay.
French, and so the Canadian government's like, all right, here we go, there we go. Here's an app, everyone should use it. And I think last I checked, I think only Ontario had
Okay.
adopted it. Um, but I know that Alberta hasn't, because instead of adopting this free open source one, we
Hmm.
paid a company like $200,000 or whatever to develop one that then has now been like the most recent news report, which is maybe outdated by now, but that I saw was like they've used it in contact tracing
Right.
19
Yeah.
times. That's nothing. That's nothing, right? Like, and apparently it's been downloaded like many, many, many times, like 100,000 or
Okay.
something times or more. And so like what's it doing then? Like what's going? Clearly something is going wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and I haven't installed it because it's a proprietary app that's going to be constantly monitoring like a thing that is being used, as evidenced by the fact that the app would be useful for contact tracing. It'd be this proprietary app that is constantly being able to see who I'm near, right? Like that's quite invasive if you can't look at the source
Hmm.
code. and we have an option that to do it. I have the Canadian federal government one installed on my phone right now, and Alberta Health could call Health Canada up and say, hey, we want in, and by the end of the day that would be all taken care of. Like, it's just a matter of flipping a switch, but they're not going to do it because probably somebody's buddies got paid a fair bit of money to develop this app, you know.
Yeah. So would it be beneficial for us all to download this Canadian app? Would it do anything in case we're...
Only if you're also traveling to Ontario, or I mean, to be fair, actually, I mean, I think it might be because they're so deliberately trying to hand it off to the provinces and respect provincial authority. It might not even. I think it might even cut it off so it doesn't do anything if you're in Alberta. But I'm not sure. I have it installed and it's almost just like. I thought eventually we were gonna adopt the app.
Like, it makes sense.
I was weirdly not sufficiently. Yeah. Yeah, why wouldn't we? I wasn't thinking straight. I was like, no, it's of course we would pay money for one that doesn't work instead. Like that's like obviously, because I mean the upside for them.
This is not a logical.
Yeah. Oh, it's quite logical. It's quite logical if you're an asshole and you want to give money to your friends, right? Like, it's very logical. It's just reprehensible. Yeah. But I think I kind of think it's worth installing, if only just so that, like, you know, at a certain point you can see the stats and maybe there'll be enough pressure and they'll flip that switch, you know, because they could have both apps also. Like, there's no reason we couldn't use both.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, that's my view of politics right now, is that it's just a mess. Like, I don't know. I do feel like we're in a decaying state of democracy right now. We're not. You know, politics is so much about just not what's the best for people, but what's best for the politicians' friends or whoever, making deals that are, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, though, I mean, I agree, but I don't think that's new, right?
Okay.
I don't think that's new at all. So I think we always focus on, it looks like things are so terrible now, but a lot of it's because we're looking at a rosier view of the past. I mean, remember, it was only like the 70s that Alberta finally did away with our eugenics board, right? Like, the government was officially deciding to sterilize people, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've done some pretty reprehensible and terrible things in the not so distant past.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That tendency to get into that mode where you're thinking about the present and viewing the past as some kind of ideal. You know, there was this great system in the past. Things have decayed or whatever. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay, so what do we do then as individuals? Do we just do the best we can? I guess we get back to where we started this conversation. Just try to do the best we can on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, try to navigate that tension between thinking about the big picture and actually being able to live our lives. Like, it's a push and pull, but I think we do have to have at least one foot in each. You know, if we get too unbalanced, if we only think about our own lives, then if we feel entirely powerless, then we'll never be able to change anything. But of course, if we spend too much time worrying about the broader forces in the world, then we just make ourselves miserable and live unhappy lives then.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah. Okay, well, do we want to end it there? We've been talking for an hour and 21 minutes. I have a meeting. I have to do an online meeting about a festival. We're trying to put together to like an online version of a festival that we normally do every New Year's, called Intention.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a great note to end on, because I think that's a good example of the kind of thing we should be doing, right? Like, trying to do things that like create things, bring things into the world that wouldn't be there without our effort, right? I think that makes the world a better place, and it just fundamentally makes us feel better about things. Yeah,
exactly.
Too.
Well, I mean, thank you for being on here today, because I think that this is an example of that. Even if no one listens to this, it was beneficial for me. I think the fact of having a mic in front of me, like a big gigantic donkey penis looking mic in front of me, it puts a different kind of expectation on the conversation. I think I don't know exactly how, but it makes it makes me want to engage more, and it's nice to just kind of try out this different situation. And yeah, thank you for taking part in the experiment. I think it went really, really well.